Hello, and welcome to another segment of Smoke Signals. I'm your host for today's show, Lieutenant Chris Taylor from the LaGrange Fire Department. We have an awesome show lineup for you today. We have two guests here from WRBL News that will be on the show with us. So, kick back, relax, because you're about to watch Smoke Signals. Welcome back. Our very first guest for today's show is Miss Meryl Van Shore, news anchor with the WRBL news station in Columbus, Georgia. Hello, Mercer, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. We go way back, Chris.
Yes, we do. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and it is. I'll tell you this: it's great to have you on the show for several reasons. Not because we're classmates, for one, but because you are a local news anchor that a lot of the people you grew up with and went to school with get a chance to see you in the mornings in Columbus, and I think that's awesome.
Wow, thanks, Chris. I mean, it's an honor, but it's an honor to be here too, so thank you for letting me be on your show.
Yes, definitely. Now, I know we have quite a few things we want to discuss today, but if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been in the news industry.
All right, well, I grew up here. I went to school with you.
Yes.
We went to LaGrange, go Grangers.
Yes, definitely.
And go Grangers. I went to school at University of Florida. I majored in broadcast journalism. Okay. And then I went to, I think I'm most well known around here for going to Fargo, North Dakota and being the weather person there. That's what everybody always says.
I bet you did a lot of weather there.
I learned a lot about weather for sure. I had just bought my Mazda Miata. Right out of college. Wow. And I drove it up to Fargo, North Dakota.
Wow. Nothing like a two-seater, huh?
Nothing like a two-seater doing 360s in the middle of a Fargo blizzard. So I learned a lot. But I also worked in Savannah, Albany, Charlotte, North Carolina, and also I'm at WRBL Columbus after a little brief hiatus.
Okay.
I've got 3 girls here, and my husband and my family, they all are from here. So I grew up here.
Cool. It's nice to hear all those wonderful things and those journeys that you've had over the years. But today you have inspired me in a project that you were thinking about, and the project was concerning, fire escape planning and smoke alarms, which is a big issue, not only for the fire service, but also, being able to educate the community on the things they need to know about that. So if you could, what prompted you to spearhead a project concerning smoke alarms and fire escape planning in the home?
Well, I heard about it a couple of years ago that kids might not wake up to smoke alarms. So that's when I contacted you and I said, would you be interested in trying it out? Let's try to see if my kids will sleep through the alarm. I did it to my kids, so I don't know how good that is, of a good mom I was, but but I had you come over and kind of teach them the fire safety plan, because we needed to do that. And exactly. I don't think we really did. I think our kids learned, you actually went to the schools, you went to their school, and you taught them a fire safety plan. And I knew that we were supposed to meet at the mailbox, but we never went through the plan like I thought we should. So I was thinking this would be a good opportunity to kind of go through the motions. I was never expecting to have happen. I really wasn't.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a big eye-opener. And of course, you all learned a lot, and I learned a lot too, as far as being a fire service professional. And but we do have the video footage that was put together that was aired on your news station, WRBL. And we're going to take a look at it real quick and show you what we came up with in this project.
It's a terrifying scenario. The very tool that you depend on to protect your family doesn't work. It's cause for alarm.
That's exactly what's happening right now in homes throughout the country. Our kids are sleeping right through the fire alarms.
News 3's Mercer Van Shore puts this very scenario to the test with her own kids. She talked to fire safety specialist and the pediatrician about what we can all do to keep our kids safe.
When you hear this, fire, you believe this will happen. But we found this doesn't happen, and according to experts, the majority of the time, kids simply don't hear the fire alarm that's meant to save their lives.
Can anyone tell me what this is?
I had LaGrange Fire Department Public Information Officer Chris Taylor come to my house and teach my 3 girls, Caroline 7, Vivian 6, and Jacqueline 6, a fire safety plan for our home. Taylor was extremely patient and thorough, teaching them all the important lessons. Crawl under the smoke to escape a fire, stop, drop, and roll if you catch on fire, even escape through the window on a rope ladder.
Having a fire escape plan is very important because the family needs to know what to do when a fire occurs and where to go.
But after practicing our safety plan for hours, it simply didn't matter. This is what happened when a smoke alarm went off in my house. The first time the alarm went off for 1 minute with the doors closed. We tried again, but no movement. We even propped the doors wide open a 3rd time and still no movement.
They go into a deep sleep versus adults that stay in a little bit different REM sleep. And when they're in that deep sleep, so they're very hard to arouse.
According to a study with the American Journal of Pediatrics, 90% of kids aged 3 to 14 will sleep through a traditional smoke alarm.
What did work for a good majority of the kids in this study, an alarm just like this one. It's the KidSmart Voice Smoke Detector. It allows a parent to record his or her own voice to direct the child to wake up and get out immediately.
Get up right now. There's a fire. Get up. It's mommy.
You've got the same kid in the same sleep pattern, but with the parent's voice and with that lower decibel, that the kids would respond much quicker.
I bought this particular alarm and put it to the test.
Get up. It's mommy.
My daughter Caroline woke up almost immediately. Problem solved, right? Well, there's a problem. You can't find these alarms at the store.
So it's kind of disturbing to know that we found this research that says we need the voice activated, but when we researched it, we really had a hard time finding.
According to both Honeycutt and Taylor, both of them encourage families to do exactly what my family did. Simulate a fire emergency and adjust your plan to cater to your family.
You cannot depend on smoke alarms for younger children, and again up to even about 14, that a parent needs to have a plan in place where if a fire alarm goes off, that each parent has a plan to go get that individual child.
If you don't have a plan and if you don't identify those things, then you won't know if a kid sleeps through a smoke alarm or not. So it's better to, at least have a plan and test it to see. That way you can make adjustments. Well, we watched an amazing video, and I thank you once again for allowing me the opportunity to partner with your family and putting this video together. I think it was very noteworthy that you thought about LaGrange Fire Department to come out and help in this situation. But now, there was a lot of information that was discussed in the video.
Yes.
And
I'm going to bring it back up so I can get you the numbers, exactly what we were talking about.
yes, and a lot of statistics that you shared. So if you would, kind of, before we get into that, kind of talk about, after completing the project, what did you learn about having a plan of escape before a fire emergency?
Well, before I get into that, I want to tell you how awesome you were to come to the house. You were very thorough, and my kids were listening to you, and it's so important to have that fire safety plan and go through that.
Yeah,
which we needed that.
It
You
is.
were awesome.
Because what's
awesome.
what's important to know is, when you have a plan, any kind of plan, you need to practice it. Because if you don't practice it, you don't know if there's any changes or adjustments that need to be made in that plan. And you also need to make sure that your plan includes, especially a fire escape plan, it needs to include people who may be visiting, babysitters, and things of that nature. People who are not in your home on a regular basis, they also need to know the plan, because a fire can happen when they're there and you may not be there. So. But what did you have to share with us?
Well, we talked to Dr. Karen Honeycutt. She's a pediatrician here in town. She was great because we worked together. We did a really great story in that, she did some research, you did some research. We all came together, and I put my kids through this, and I realized that, the main thing is we need to make sure we go through this, because the smoke alarm is probably not going to wake up your kids.
Right.
And according to the American Journal of Pediatrics, 90%, that's 90%, there's a very good chance your kids are not going to wake up. That's ages 3 to 14 are going to sleep through a traditional smoke alarm. And it was shocking to Karen too. I don't want to speak for her, but she was kind of like, I didn't really realize this. And when we shared it on Facebook, we both put this on Facebook, and I was like, I can't believe that my kids didn't wake up. None of them. I think we got a lot of really good traction in educating the public the importance of your fire safety plan.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that you learned for your own personal home after you put the project together, what did you actually learn and actually sit and talk with your family about after we worked all this out?
Well, I love that you came in and you kind of went through the house. I mean, you said, look, we need to have fire alarms in the attic and the basement. That was one of my favorite things. And then I didn't know that you could have fire alarms that were interconnected.
Yes.
And then, because I have an older house, and we love our house, but we only had one on the second floor and on the bottom floor.
Right.
We didn't have one in the basement or the attic. We didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
But we're definitely going to do that, and we are continuing to work on it too, because it's an investment.
Exactly.
But it's worth it.
And since we're talking about the attic and the basements, where does most of people's possessions are stored at in most cases? They're either in the basement
That's
or
right.
they're in the attic. So you want to make sure you keep those areas covered with the same amount of fire protection as you would inside the home. And having those interconnecting smoke alarms, once one go off, they'll all go off, so you'll know that, hey, there may be an emergency somewhere else, so let's make sure we get everyone out of the house until we find out what's actually going on. And that's important. Now that you've done your own family assessment, how important is it to have working smoke alarms and a fire escape plan?
Oh, it's so imperative. It's imperative. I mean, I knew it was important. We all know this. Change your batteries, you spring forward, fall back.
Yes.
You change your batteries. That's all we really kind of do. And most people, I know you told me like the statistics of, most people have a plan, but do they really? Do they really have a plan?
Yeah, 71% I believe have a plan, but only like 49.
They say they have a plan.
They say they have a plan, but only 49% of them actually practice that plan. And that's a real low number. So we're encouraging our viewing audience and the community to make sure that you have a plan, you practice the plan, you include other members outside of your family that may be inside of your home, someone who may have disabilities or anything of that nature.
And the dogs. You even mentioned the dogs.
I mentioned about dogs, even dogs, because everybody's living situation is not the same. So that's why you need to look at your situation, see what adjustments need to be made, see what hazards you may have in your home and try to fix those. Put that plan together and practice it as frequently as possible so everyone will know what to do and where to go in case of an emergency.
And it's not all the same because, fire alarms, they're probably not going to work. So you might have one child that sleeps through everything, and they change too. They might get older. You might have a teenager that sleeps through everything.
Right.
So it's important. I learned from you, it's important to do this every, 6 months? Isn't
At
that
least
right?
every
6 months?
6 months, or what's practical for that family until everyone, really knows the whole process of their escape plan. So, but I want to thank you again for allowing us to partner with you and getting this project done. And hopefully it's an eye-opener to a lot of families out there who say they have a plan, hasn't practiced, or never even thought about the importance of having a plan. Now that they can go out there and put one together.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you too, Chris. It was an honor, and hopefully we can get more people educated out there.
Definitely. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back here on Smoke Signals. Welcome back. Our next guest on the show today is meteorologist Carmen Rose from the WRBL news station in Columbus. Hello, Carmen, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I know that you are a busy person, especially being a meteorologist, and we just thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for coming and being on our show today.
Well, thank you. Fortunately, the weather's really nice today, so I don't have to spend too much time in the studio.
Right, exactly. Now, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how long have you been in the news industry?
Okay, so I am relatively new. I graduated from Michigan State University in 2015.
Okay.
And I got my BA in journalism and concentration in electronic news, and then my BS in earth science with my concentration in atmospheric sciences or meteorology.
Okay.
And then I took some additional credits as well, so essentially my transcript is identical to somebody who went to a school specifically for meteorology, which would be like Penn State or Valparaiso or anything like that. So I can get my certification.
Cool. Sounds good. Now, if you would, being a meteorologist, I'm quite sure there's extensive training and education you have to have. So kind of touch on that a little bit.
Absolutely. So a lot of people don't know that meteorology requires a lot of math and a lot of science, because we're constantly analyzing numbers and data. So when you get your BS in meteorology, or the equivalent of it, you have to take calculus-based physics, and you have to take all the way up from Calc 1 up to differential equations. Okay. And so you also have to take general chemistry and inorganic chemistry. So there's a lot of high-level science and high-level math, because what we're doing is just taking numbers, and when you think of calculus and integrals, that's essentially what these supercomputers are doing. When we look at different models, we look at different numbers, that's how we're starting to get the forecast. So if you like math and science, then meteorology would be great for you.
Right. So those of you who are into math and science and whizzes of, you know, just numbers in general,
yes,
hey, meteorology may be the thing that you're looking for.
That's right, yes.
All right. Now, we're going to be talking about weather, quite obviously. Now, when is severe weather season in Georgia and Alabama, actually?
Okay, so it really starts, it already has started, but it really starts in late winter and then early spring. So you really start to see it ramp up between March, April, and May. And that's the same season really for when we start to see tornadoes here in Georgia and Alabama. And that's just because we start to see warmth coming in from the Gulf, and then we also have nice cold fronts coming in from the north, and then the warmth from the south, rather. Right. So that's what's going to be our fuel and help to spark some of the severe weather.
So basically you have all these different elements combining together and then causing a big clash in the middle.
That's right. So you think of, you need your warm air and your cold air. So winter, it's pretty much the same. You've got cold air, unless you get into late winter, and then you can also have some severe weather as well. Okay. But really you think about spring, and that's going to be when we see it.
All right. Now, why are there different months for each season? Because I'm quite sure of you and always just want to know, okay, why is it that this season we have this and this season we have that, and it's been kind of consistent, so kind of explain that.
Absolutely. So like I was saying with the severe storms and also tornadoes, we think about March, April, and May when that starts to ramp up. Hurricane season, though, is going to start your June 1st and then November 30th. That's how long it lasts, and then it peaks in September. Now the reason that's later in the year is because we have to have a warm ocean temperatures. So in the Atlantic, that's really going to peak around September when we've really gone through summer. And you need that water to be 80 degrees. So you really need it to be later in the summer. So that's why we have hurricane season later than our severe weather season.
Now, I want to ask this before we go to our next question as it relates to the seasons. And we've seen some historical numbers as it relates to the temperatures. Kind of touch on that, because, you know, just to have, you know, 70, 80s in some cases, weather in the late winter, that's kind of unusual. So kind of talk about how that's been changing things as far as the weather.
It has, and we've had some exceptionally warm days, really, like you were saying, in January, in February, even in March. We saw temperatures in the upper 80s, and we're expecting those temperatures to continue to increase. You know, the year 2016 was our warmest year globally on record ever. And so when you start to see warmth like this earlier on in the season, that's going to help fuel some of those thunderstorms. I mean, there's a lot of factors to severe thunderstorms, but the first thing you need warmth and moisture, and then you also need a trigger. So that warmth that we're seeing is helping with those storms.
Now, and I want to ask this, because when you have that type of warmth in late winter like that, does that typically make the thunderstorms even more intense, simply because, you know, we're not used to having weather that early in this, that late in the winter?
Right. Well, absolutely it can, but you also have to have the right setup. We could be warm and moist, and there may not be a front that comes through, or any system, a low pressure system, which would be a storm system typically, and then it would be okay. But if you start to see a front move through, and then we're exceptionally warm, and it's like 70 in January, that's gonna absolutely help the development of those storms.
Okay. Now, let's talk about thunderstorms. What makes thunderstorms so severe?
Okay, so the National Weather Service uses the guidelines for severe thunderstorms when you have a severe thunderstorm warning, and you'll usually get it on your phone notification, right, or on the news will break in typically if it is a strong enough storm. Now they use the guidelines of the wind needs to be over 57 miles per hour, and hail, the diameter needs to be an inch or greater. So think about a quarter or anything over a quarter. And then also it needs to be capable of producing a tornado. Now it could be any of these qualifications or all of them.
Right.
And that would classify it as severe.
Okay. And I know thunderstorms, you know, I tell you, when thunderstorms do come through, you know, people have to, you know, take cover, because if you, and talk about the lightning in the thunderstorms, because, you know, a lot of people kind of may get confused that, well, you know, I got time to do this and do that, but if you start hearing thunder, you need to start taking action.
Yes, absolutely. So anytime you hear thunder, you're going to be within the vicinity of lightning. And so that's a lot of the times why National Weather Service has the slogan, you know, if thunder roars, go indoors.
Okay.
And that's going to be where you're going to be safest. So lightning, even if you don't see it, it could strike, and it has a very long range as far as how long it can strike.
Right.
And then the other thing is too, if you can't go indoors, if you have a car, if you can go in that car, as long as it's not a convertible, you're going to be good, because the metal top is what's going to protect you.
Okay. All right, good. What are some common weather myths people often mistake as fact?
Okay, so I hear a lot of times that people will ask me, hey, does the Chattahoochee River weaken storms when it crosses over it? And a lot of people will think, oh, well, it goes across a lake, it goes across the stream, and the storm will either change direction or dissipate, or it changes the storm in some aspect.
Right.
And it's just, there's no data that proves it. Just because a thunderstorm is gigantic, when you think about it, can extend over 5 miles into the atmosphere, and then the length and diameter of it is far longer and greater than the Chattahoochee River,
right,
or even the Mississippi, you know, which is a much larger river. So it's not going to have an effect on that thunderstorm because it's just too big. Now, when you think about the Great Lakes, like Lake Michigan, now that can influence your precipitation. But if you're just thinking about Chattahoochee River, Flint River, it's not going to affect those thunderstorms.
Okay, well, and that's good to know, because I'm quite sure, especially with West Point Lake,
yes,
you know, a lot of times we can see a storm coming out of Alabama and coming over to West Point Lake, and either it, you know, sometimes it seems like it just goes around for whatever reason, or it just disappears because we're under the gun expecting severe weather, and then it's just rain.
Right,
So,
I know.
It's weird.
It is weird, and a lot of the times that's just the nature of the storm. It's not directly related to West Point Lake or any specific body of water. Now, another myth I hear all the time, people think that the safest corner in your basement or in your house would be the southwest corner. Have you ever heard that one?
I haven't heard that one. Yeah.
Well, I haven't had anybody ask me it, but it's usually a pretty common one that people think the southwest corner is the safest. There's not really any corner that's more safe than any other corner.
Right, exactly.
The reason people think it's the southwest corner is typically weather systems are going to move west to east here in the United States, which is true.
Right.
But a tornado can come from any direction. So any corner isn't going to be more safe than the other.
Okay, that's some good information. Now, what is the deadliest weather phenomenon and why?
Okay, so when we think about weather phenomenons, we're talking about tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding, things of that nature. Now, excessive heat and cold contribute to a lot of deaths, but the number one phenomenon is flooding.
Right.
So a lot of people will think it's a tornado or a hurricane because those are terrifying. And you think, whoa, those are really destructive, which they are. But flooding really contributes to the highest number, just because a lot of times flash flooding will interfere with people driving, and some people think that, oh, I can drive through this, and then they get stuck, and then water is moving very quickly. It can even lift up the car if you have enough of that water.
Wow, yeah, and I can understand that because, you know, we've seen extensive amount of flooding here just in the LaGrange Troup County area over the years, and it, you know, it makes sense that flooding can be the biggest phenomenon in weather. Now, real quick, what are some resources that people can use to keep in contact with weather?
Okay, well, the first one would be the National Weather Service. So you can go to just weather.gov and you can type in LaGrange or Columbus, anything you want, and this is going to be a great resource for an hourly forecast, day-to-day forecast. You can even get climate information. Hey, is it going to be warmer next month, or is it expected to be colder next month, have more rain? So that's a great resource. And then, of course, I'm going to suggest people to go to WRBL.com since we have a team of meteorologists. It's 4, including me. And so we make forecasts all the time. That's what we do, twice daily. So we'll have updated information as well as very localized information. Okay.
Well, you have provided us with a wealth of information today, especially as it relates to weather, and we definitely appreciate that. And we appreciate you being here again, sharing your wealth of knowledge as it relates to being at the news station in Columbus. So thank you again for being here. And we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more on Smoke Signals. Welcome back. I'd like to take this time to thank once again our special guest for being on the show from WRBL News Station in Columbus, Ms. Mercer Van Scoor, and also Carmen Rose. And we hope the information that they shared with you all today have been very beneficial as it relates to weather and having a fire escape plan in your home. We want to thank you again, our viewing audience, for watching another segment of Smoke Signals. Until next time, take care.